This morning I want to talk to you about Russia. I know this is not my impeachment gate sermon. I want to talk about Russian spirituality. And it doesn't get much attention because it's not like Eastern spirituality like Buddhism or Franciscan spirituality. It's not very well known at all in the West. But I think it's a really interesting thing to think about. And it has its own flavor. And one person I want to lift up this morning is a guy by the name of Seraphim of Sarov. Sounds like a great name. And he was a great guy. He was kind of the Francis of Assisi of Russia back in the 1800s. And he lived during a time of great conflict and trial. A time of the rich oppressing the poor, of all sorts of political strife, of famine, and corruption in the church. Like, what else is new? It's the same thing, different century. Seraphim, people appreciated him because he lived out in the woods. And he lived this peaceful existence. And people came to him kind of seeking advice as an elder. Tradition has it even he had a bear that was his pet. And you gotta love a person who has a bear as his pet. And one day, someone came up to him in his hermitage and said, Father Seraphim, what can I do? This world is falling apart around us. The Tsar is giving us grief. There's famine, there's conflict, there's death. What do I do? And Seraphim said, if you become peace, you will save 1,000 souls. If you become peace, you will save 1,000 souls. And it's interesting, that was not the answer that everyone would expect him to say. What is interesting about Russian spirituality is this idea that if you transform yourself, you will in turn transform the world around you. And it's really at the heart of all Eastern Christian spirituality. This idea of theosis, the idea that as you change, you become more and more divine, like God. So that transformation of yourself will lead to the transformation of the world. On the second Sunday of Advent, again, we're not getting peachy readings of angels or shepherds yet. We get the story of John the Baptist, that great character of faith that shows up in Advent and in Lent every year. Out fair, he shows up and kind of pokes us in the side and says, hey, pay attention. You got to do something. You got to prepare yourself. You got to change yourself. You got to change the world. And what I think is so interesting about John the Baptist and Seraphim and so many other saints is that this idea that transformation of the world starts not by a protest or by some sort of political process, even though that's where it might go. Transformation starts internal. Something that you do for yourself. Something that happens in your heart. And by transforming your heart and your mind and your soul, the world expands like ripples in a pond. It goes out and out and out. Kind of that butterfly effect you hear of, that the wings of a butterfly in one place changes the weather pattern halfway around the world. A lot of times I think prophets get bad names. They're kind of these crazy men and women who sometimes do things that are strange or outside the box. And the Bible's chock full of those stories. But really, what these people are doing are acting like butterflies. That their one act transforms not only themselves, but transforms the world that they live in. That through their prayer, through their changing of their heart, the world is in turn changed. And I think sometimes we don't recognize the power of someone in prayer, the power of someone who has that peace in their heart that Seraphim talks about, and what that can do to change so much of the world. Think about all the great social leaders of the last 100 years. How many of them have rooted themselves in deep spirituality and have become great peace? And it's through that great peace that they can lead the world into a different place. Think about it. Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh. It goes on and on and on. Those people root themselves in something deeper. And because they have that deep root, they can change the world. On the other side of Seraphim's story is that he was always a pain in the butt to the Tsar. Completely. Here was this holy guy who was living this righteous life. And when corruption came about in the world, he could say something because he knew what his role was in the world. And I think that's what also is the role of the church. Prophets didn't expire at the end of the Old Testament. They continue on today. We still have that place, that role of being a thorn in the side for a world that sometimes goes off the kilter. There was a great article I was reading recently about what the role of the church is in our present world. And one of the pastors who wrote this article said, the role of the church is always to be a safe space, but it should not be a comfortable place. The church should always be safe. Safe to be who you are, safe from all the pains and sufferings of the world, but should not be a comfortable place. Because it calls us to be transformed, to be changed. And sometimes that changing is a hard thing. Seraphim lived that life as a hermit in the forest of Russia for many years. He lived there with his bear. And another day, someone came to him. It seems like everyone was showing up. It must have been an annoying lifestyle. And someone came to him and said, Father Seraphim, what do I do? How do I change the world? And this time he said something different. He says, why don't you go out and pray? And I'll pray in here and come back to me. So this man waited outside of his hut. And he waited. And he waited. And he waited some more. Then he went and said, well, I wonder what's up with this guy. Nothing's coming out of him. He finally opened the door and thought the hut was on fire. But instead, Seraphim was on fire. His whole being was on fire. And after that, he said, if you want to change the world, you must become like fire. So, prophets aren't just something in the past, but something in the present. But if we're called to change the world, we need to change ourselves first. And that inner transformation can only lead to something so much bigger, so much greater than us. We just have to allow it to happen.